So, as I mentioned earlier, today's session is going to be about telling you what the brutal truth of marketing really is. Because these are things that I wished people would have told me when I joined marketing. And, because marketing is not a creative playground where you just get to make pretty campaigns and watch the money roll in. Marketing is psychological warfare. It's getting punched in the face by data every single day and choosing to get back up. That's why most people just get burnt out of marketing within 2 years. Not because they lack talent, not because they don't know the tactics, it's just nobody prepared them for the emotional and psychological reality of what this job demands. And so that's what I want to do with this session with you guys. Because the first thing I have to tell you about marketing is that it's a rejection business. It's just disguised as a creative business. Because 95% of your content will be ignored. 90% of your outreach will go unanswered. 80% of your campaigns will underperform. 70% of your best ideas will fall flat. And none of that means you're bad at your job. It's just simply how marketing works. You'll spend hours on something brilliant, publish it, and then nothing happens. Or you launch a campaign you're proud of, and then someone will immediately ask, "Oh, what went wrong?" Or you'll pitch an idea you believe in, and then the client will choose the generic option instead. And this will happen to you over and over and over again. And if you take it personally, this job is going to break you. So you have to build rejection resilience. And you have to be deliberate about this. How do you do that? Well, step one is you have to separate your work from your worth. Your campaign failed. You didn't. Your content got ignored. You didn't. And then you also have to learn to reframe rejections as data because every no is information. Every flop is feedback. The point is just don't do it again. Every ignored post tells you something about your audience, But then you also have to learn to celebrate the attempts. If you sent 100 cold emails and got 3 replies, don't obsess over the 97 no response messages. Celebrate the fact that you sent 100 emails because most people won't even send 10 emails. And then just focus on the 3 that worked. What was it that worked? The best marketers I know care deeply about their work, but they stay emotionally detached from outcomes. They build the best campaign they can. They put in the effort. They make sure not to make the same mistake again, but then they let the market decide. Because you can only control the inputs, not the outputs. And if you want to accelerate your growth, I would also suggest keeping a failure portfolio, which is like a running list of your biggest flops, but then write what each taught you right next to it. You'll be shocked by how many big wins come directly from those lessons. And then, of course, the second thing about marketing is that you will always have imposter syndrome. It does not matter which level you're at. You will constantly feel like you don't know what you're doing because most of the time you don't. The more you learn more about marketing, the more you realize how much you don't know. When you're new, marketing feels simple. And then when you're intermediate, it feels impossibly complex. And then when you're advanced, it becomes simple again, but in a completely different way. And throughout that journey, you would constantly feel stupid. And that's very normal. Clients will expect you to predict the future. Your boss will expect you to guarantee results. People will expect you to have answers you simply cannot have. But here's the truth nobody says out loud nobody has all the answers. The best marketers are simply better at making educated guesses and learning fast. Because marketing changes constantly. The platforms, the algorithms, people's behaviors, the tools. You'll never feel like you've caught up. So there will always be a trend you haven't mastered or a skill you're still learning. So when that imposter syndrome hits, remember that, everybody feels this way, even the people you admire. And you don't need to know everything, just more than the person asking, by the way. And your job isn't to be perfect, it's to be helpful. Experience is the only way to cure your stress. And you don't eliminate imposter syndrome, you just learn to operate with it. The main thing is that you understand the failures that you're making and make sure not to do them again. That's it. And then the third is marketing is emotional labor. It's not about campaigns, it's also about managing emotions. Because you have to manage your boss's expectations. You have to teach clients why their simple request is actually really complex. You have to explain why copying a competitor's campaign isn't going to work for the business. You have to justify every dollar spent, every test run, every result delivered. You're not just a marketer. You're a therapist, you're a translator, you're a negotiator. And when marketing works, everybody takes credit, by the way. Something that you have to be okay with is when marketing works, everybody will take credit. But when marketing doesn't work, it's going to be your fault. If there's a quota that's being missed, it's because, oh, marketing didn't send good enough leads to sales. If product adoption is low, it's because marketing didn't position it right. If revenue is down, it's because marketing's campaign weren't effective enough. And you become the scapegoat for the problems you didn't create. And on top of that, you will constantly be pulled between what looks creative and what actually works. Because you'll build campaigns you love that perform poorly. You'll build campaigns you think are boring that perform amazingly. And sadly enough, we have wired our brains to think, oh, marketing equals creative, but it's the most boring and the most generic ads that work usually. Because the market doesn't care about our artistic vision, it cares about its own problems. So, emotional intelligence is mandatory. You have to be able to read the room. You have to be able to take criticism without getting defensive. You have to be able to deliver bad news calmly. You have to be able to stay composed when everybody else is panicking. And that is part of the marketing nobody teaches you. But it's the part that will determine whether you last or not. And then of course, you'll be judged by metrics you can't control. Because attribution is a nightmare. Linking marketing and revenue is going to be a nightmare. Somebody sees your content, then your ad, then your email, then your landing page, then they buy 3 months later, and then the only thing that gets credit is the last thing that converted them. So you'll constantly fight for recognition for things that contributed to results but don't show up in the tracking, right? So that means there's no correlation versus causation. Like sales goes up and people assume it was your campaign. Sales goes down, people still assume it was your campaign. And so you get credit for things you didn't cause and get blamed for things that are outside of your control. And then comes the data problem when it comes to marketing. Tiny sample sizes, campaigns that haven't run long enough, conversion rates based on 3 data points. So you'll spend a lot of time explaining statistics to people who want simple answers. And when it comes to reporting, you'll spend a massive chunk of your time making reports everybody skims for 6 seconds. So some of the most valuable things you can do is brand, content, and community. These are the hardest to measure, but they'll still expect you to show return on investment down to the last money, to the last coin spent. And this is the game. It's not fair, but it is what it is. And then the other thing that I need you to know is you're going to make high stakes decisions alone. Marketing decisions are often made alone with incomplete information, under time pressure, and with real consequences. So you'll often be the only person in the room thinking about the marketing implications of a business decisions. When a price changes, you're the one that freaks out. When someone wants to shift the positioning, you're the one that freaks out. When they want to shift the target market, or a new feature launches, or a competitor makes a move. Everybody else sees their function, but you see the entire story. You'll be expected to make recommendations without knowing about the market, how the market will react, what competitors will do, or how customers will respond. And you'll have to make those decisions fast because campaign launches don't wait. Competitors don't wait. Sales teams don't wait. The business isn't going to wait for you. And when you make a recommendation, you're putting your reputation on the line. If it works, you might get a nice job. But if it fails, you will definitely get the blame. So you have to build the skill of confident decision making even when you're uncertain. People don't want to hear, I'm not sure, I think this is going to work. They want to hear, based on everything we know, this is our best option. Because marketing requires conviction, even when the information is incomplete. So here's the question I want to leave you with. This is going to help you see if you are prepared for the realities that actually define this industry. 1, can you handle constant rejection without taking it personally? 2, Can you make confident decisions without perfect information? 3, can you manage other people's emotions while managing your own? And 4, can you take responsibility for results you don't fully control? If you can say yes to those, you have what it takes to thrive in marketing. If any of those are a no, then that's your growth plan. Because tactics will change, platforms will change, algorithms will change. The only thing that will never change are the psychological requirements. And if you want to be a marketer who lasts, if you want to be a marketer who climbs up the career ladder, then you have to master these things.